Talking with Josh Harvey of Fox Sports Next and Big Red Report. Moving on a little bit from the recruiting side, Alfonso Dennard charged with a DUI 15 months after he was charged and then later on convicted of assaulting a police officer outside of a bar in Lincoln. When you saw this, what was your initial reaction?
I'm disappointed because I think you can make a mistake in life, but then people kind of look at you differently once you make two mistakes. And I think if he would have just been on the straight and narrow, and between his play and being a late round draft pick, people always want to kind of cheer for the underdog. I think he would have been fine in a couple of years. He would have done his time, maybe. And I'd heard even that that could have possibly been suspended or whatever. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know that kind of stuff. But I think eventually he would have been fine. And this now is somewhat of a black eye, and I think it's gotten even more media coverage, obviously, because of the Hernandez thing. The media, has extra attention put on the Patriots right now, and so I think this story, came at the worst possible time. I mean, you see people, NFL analysts, going, "Well, I wonder if they're going to release him." Well, this is an organization that, hired Dante Stallworth just last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, and he was in a very similar situation, and there was an actual death, and they hired him after the fact, and then you got people now asking, well, is Dennard going to get released? And so I think it was just really, really bad timing, and I was disappointed to hear about the test.
Yeah, Josh, I mean, everybody was a little bit disappointed, but last Friday, a little bit about Dennard's side of the story comes out, and it appears that maybe there are some variables in this particular arrest that are maybe not so cut and dry. Where Dennard's side of the story says he blew into the breathalyzer twice. His blood alcohol, and this is according to Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, who will join me here on Drop the Mic tomorrow at 4:20. Dennard says that he blew into the breathalyzer twice, and he registered a blood alcohol content level below that of what a driving drunk would be.
Yep.
Officer told him that he didn't blow hard enough, and that caused the did not comply charge. And he also says that he was never asked to take a blood test once getting back to the station. His side of the story creates some interesting questions. Do you think that might be why the Patriots are taking a wait-and-see attitude?
I don't know, even if he's charged, if the Patriots release him, to be completely honest. I guess I'd be somewhat surprised if they did. But yeah, you're probably right. If they are on the fence and they're waiting to possibly release him, you're probably right. They are probably waiting to see what happens with this, if this is a situation where it's thrown out. There's a lot of stuff being reported. I took flack for this last year, and I'm going to say it again. Why even a situation, though? Last year it was a week before the draft, and he's out late at night, and people said, well, hey, you have a right to party. I totally agree. But at times you got to be smart about the situation and not necessarily be out a week before the NFL draft partying downtown. And I took a lot of flack for that last year, and I still think that's the case. And I would say this is in a somewhat similar situation. What are you doing out at 2 o'clock in the morning, driving around? What are you doing? You've already been in trouble once. Even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're running the risk of possibly, putting yourself in a situation. And you got to be thankful for the fact that, you still have an opportunity to be in the NFL and to turn your life around. And I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but that's just the way I feel. Whether he's guilty or not guilty, why are you out?
I'm talking with Josh Harvey of Fox Sports Next and Big Red Report. Josh, I think that's an interesting point, because why are you out driving, considering that even if his side of the story is 1,000% accurate, and Dennard, what he says, that he had drank, but he wasn't above the level of being drunk legally. I mean, if you're that guy and you've already been in trouble, why leave? Why get behind the wheel of a car if you've even had one?
Exactly. That's my point. And I know a lot of people disagree with it, but bring your boys over and have a drink in your garage so you're at home, so nothing can happen. Something along those lines. That's I guess where I would differ from people is I don't think you put yourself in that situation, because the only thing that can come out of it is bad. There's nothing good that can come out of it. And so just stay at home. Have somebody else driving you, whatever may be the case. It's just I can't understand why you'd put yourself at risk like that.
And Josh, moving on a little bit from Dennard to the Big Ten, saying they're going to start kicking guys out of games for, quote, targeted hits on, quote unquote, defenseless players. Do you think that's a little bit overkill to start suspending guys and kicking them out of games for hits that essentially what Kenny Bell's hit was during the Big Ten championship game last year?
Yeah, I think it is, because I think it's so hard for a referee or an official to kind of see sometimes stuff at game speed, and sometimes something looks a little worse than it is, or vice versa. It looks worse than it actually was. And so, when I hear things like, "Hey, if there's any doubt, throw them out," that I think there's better ways to do that. I think you have an opportunity to a week to review a guy's film or whatnot. If you feel like a hit was dirty or whatnot, then suspend them for the next game. But I think doing it on the spot is just, you're leaving yourself open to making mistakes. And I think ultimately, we're going to see one of those mistakes eventually, and it's going to be a hot topic, because I don't want to say it's going to cost somebody a ball game, but we're going to see some linebacker, some big-time safety, a corner, somebody get popped and thrown out, and it's going to change a game.
He's Josh Harvey of Fox Sports Next and Big Red Report. Josh, thanks a lot for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Talk to you guys later.
You can hear that entire interview, of course, on theticketfm.com following the show. I think it's interesting that it brings up the Dennard DUI, and I think that it's always a good rule of thumb that if you've been drinking at all, don't even put yourself in the position. I think for Alfonso Dennard, it goes maybe times 10. Essentially, considering that he's been in trouble not that long ago and he has to serve his time. I mean, the guy needed to understand earlier that when you do that, when you get in trouble for assaulting a police officer, that's on your record. So no police officer ever anywhere is going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Like, if it's me, if I got in trouble for something like that, and I wouldn't, because I wouldn't hit a police officer because I'm not a moron. But if let's say that did happen, I would leave the state. I would never live in that state again, because I realized I couldn't jaywalk without being completely crushed and having some type of legal hassle. Because that is on your record, and they are never going to give you the benefit of the doubt if they see this is a guy who assaulted a police officer. So I think it's a good point. I hope, at least at the very least, we'll talk more about this at 5 o'clock, or in the 5 o'clock hour at some point. We got a ton of college football, ton of Husker stuff to get to. But to make this point, if I'm Alfonso Dennard, I hope that he gets a fair shake, because that's the right thing to do. That's what's right, is that he gets a fair shake. But life isn't fair. The right thing doesn't always happen. So you have to take precautions in order to make sure you're safe and that you're not going to be screwed over. Because the second you get convicted, I think it's when you get arrested, but especially when you get convicted of assaulting a police officer, you got to realize your benefit of the doubt's gone forever. Now, it's hard to have happen to Dennard, who was 22 years old when that happened, to have that realization. But, man, you have to understand that they're going to be gunning for you. And if that did happen here, it's unfortunate, because you'd like to see Dennard get a fair shake. But at the same time, that's something you should probably understand. 2 o'clock in the morning, you're driving around after you'd been drinking. If this was 8 o'clock at night and Dennard had one drink during dinner, that's one thing. The fact that it happened at 2 a.m. makes it a little tougher. Again, we'll have Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network at 4:20 tomorrow. He is the one that initially got Dennard's side of the story. He'll join me here at 4:20 on Drop the Mic tomorrow, and we'll continue to discuss it later, as well as just because I have Rappaport on. Guys from the NFL Network aren't exactly easy to book, because you have to go through a lot of different hoops. The NFL hates the media. So when they started their own media company, you knew they were going to make it a hassle. So I'm going to ask them a lot of questions the second I get them on the phone. That's going to happen. So tune in at 4:20 tomorrow to hear Ian Rappaport talk about this, along with a bunch of other NFL stories and NFL things I'm going to ask him about. Up next, talking about the NFL, Geno Smith is already being positioned to take over Sanchez's job. Talk about why next. Drop the mic.